Taoiseach, Irish Water has only collected 46% of expected revenue, despite bills falling due in the last 2 months. 43% of the expected customer base of 1.5 million have actually paid up. And if this rate continues, Taoiseach, essentially the government will take in about 120 million. It will have paid out about 130 million. There's 25 million in the water conservation grant, and there's 25 million due in interest repayments on the loans taken out for the water meters. So on this basis, the government will lose at least 35 million in revenue as a result of the imposition of this tax. It's probably the first government I've ever come across in history that, after introducing a tax, will actually lose money after its introduction. It's quite extraordinary. And in addition, Taoiseach, the capacity, of course, to pass the Eurostat test will be in severe jeopardy, notwithstanding the fact that the government has cooked the books by shifting about 60 million of Irish water spending onto the books, or from the local government onto the local government fund from Irish Water. Taoiseach, registration confirms that you will get the €100 conservation grant. No proof is needed that you actually have paid your bill, and this was confirmed this morning by Irish Water. Essentially, if you don't pay your bill, you will be rewarded with a €100 conservation grant. You actually get paid. You actually get paid for not paying your water bill. It's extraordinary. Why would you pay it at all then, if that's the case? Why would you pay the water charges
let him put his question.
if you get your €100 anyway? And those who have paid must be looking askance at all of this, Taoiseach, this morning when they've learned this. And what I want to ask you, Taoiseach, even if you're not a customer, you get the €100. If you don't pay your bill, you get the €100. Can you explain to me, Taoiseach, why a person will actually get €100 conservation grant if that person doesn't even pay a bill and doesn't pay its water charges bill? And will you accept, Taoiseach, that your policy has failed? The figures really reveal that after 14 U-turns on this entire saga, it is time to call a halt, Taoiseach.
Thank you.
Abolish these charges, abolish this whole operation and edifice. It's a moment of high farce, Taoiseach, that you've now landed us in, and that the government has landed us in, and it's time to go back to the drawing board and start afresh.
I thought you might raise this today. I thought you might raise the question of Irish Water today. The first thing I'd like to say is that I want to thank very much the 675,000 households who have paid their bill in respect of Irish Water. That represents about 2 million people in the country. You will appreciate that you're still on the same line as you always were. Leave things as they were with an inefficient system, both for water and for wastewater. And the very fact that Irish Water has been set up, admittedly with challenges, allows for the entity to be able to borrow, to invest, to fix all the problems that have been there, and to provide a proper water system and a proper wastewater system for the future for this country for the next 20, 50 years. There is a very particular section of Irish people that you don't seem to have any connection with, Deputy Martin. These are people who have paid for their water for the last 50 years, all over the country, in group water schemes, and we're very glad to get it. Many of those schemes were inferior. They're now in a position to be able to rectify them and update them, and they too get their €100 incentive from the Department of Social Protection once they're registered as users. You don't seem to recognise that at all. I've listened to many of the left-wing people talking about this over the last period, and it's the same old story. Pay for nothing, make no contribution, expect somebody else to do it for you. The government have been very clear about this, Deputy Martin. The charge here is €3 per week, or €1.15 per week, and that's a very modest and fair contribution. €3 and €1.15. Your outfit left this country in an unprecedented mess. And you're the last person who should come in here.
Sorry, would you please all stay quiet? Deputy Cowan, Deputy Cowan, it's not your question.
The position
is...
is...
leader someday, but in the meantime, allow Deputy Martin to...
I don't accept from Deputy Martin at all his assertion that if this continues. Obviously, this is the start of a billing process. These are the first bills that people have received. They're obviously entitled to put this into their budgetary strategy for their own households. This, as you know, is the government did not increase income tax like you want to do now. Unlike other utilities, no reminders have issued to households yet. This will happen, of course. Irish Water are still developing their customer database, and there may be people included in that database who are being billed unnecessarily. There are always teething problems, as you're well aware. There are approximately 182,000 properties that are included in its customer database that are holiday homes and vacant dwellings. And it's likely that some of these people may not actually be aware of their liability as yet. So I expect that over the period ahead that people will continue to contribute, to understand that it's... Thank you, Deputy Cowan. That they will continue to contribute and understand that, as they did down in Castlereagh and South Roscommon, 11,300 people had the boiled water notices lifted from their households in the last 2 weeks. The people of Castlereagh have been on a boiled water notice since November 2009. And these other areas around the country are why Irish Water was set up, to be able to borrow independently and invest to fix and rectify these problems. The question of Eurostat, Deputy Martin, is a matter for Eurostat. Obviously, that's completely independent in the way they do their analysis of the situation insofar as Irish Water is concerned, and they'll make their decision in their own good time.
Deputy Martin, 1 minute, thank you.
Taoiseach, I asked you a very simple question, and as usual, you did everything but answer the question. Can you explain why a person will get €100 conservation grant, even if that person does not pay their water bill? It's a very simple question, Taoiseach. A very simple question. And it's a question that springs from being connected to people who pay. Because they're wondering, why would you bother paying under the regime that you have established? And under that regime, you get €100 if you don't bother paying your bill. And the bottom line is, as of now, you're losing money as a result of the introduction of this water charge, given the rate of compliance. That is a fact. You've been forced into U-turn after U-turn after U-turn.
Question, please.
And the net result of that is, at the end of this year, you'll be from 35 to 50 million down after introducing this water tax. It is some feat to introduce a tax and lose money as a result of it.
Thank you, Deputy.
And only stubbornness and pig-headedness is driving you on in terms of trying to create the impression that all is well. If you want to pretend all is well, Taoiseach, that's your territory. You can do that.
To the chair.
I'm not going to try and convince you that the situation is one of high farce right now, in terms of how people look at the edifice that has been created, and the extraordinary farcical situation where if someone doesn't pay their bill, they get actually
Thank you. I think you've made your point. Thank you.
You couldn't make it up, Taoiseach,
Thank you.
in terms of administration or in terms of operating any taxation system.
Well, of course, you fail to recognise that the €100 is not just an incentive for people to contribute here, but it's a conservation grant. But of course, your whole philosophy has nothing to do with conservation. When billions were sloshing around in the Irish economy, you had no concept of what conservation of money was in the people's interest, and squandered the livelihoods, the careers, the opportunities and the ambitions of thousands and thousands of our people, some of them now in America, Australia, Britain and elsewhere. And you and your party, with that philosophy of no attempt at conservation, are directly responsible here. Now, I expect, Deputy Martin, that people will continue to contribute to the building of an entity for dealing with the many problems that we have with. Thank you, Deputy Cowan. With the quality of water, Deputy Cowan, the extent of wastewater going into lakes and rivers and seas, when blue flags are being lost, where the hospitality sector is being interfered with. This is the reason for Irish Water. You know that for many years the average investment has been about 300 million. It should be 600 million at least, and that's why Irish Water was set up. And your own philosophy, of course, was to approve of charges for water much higher than the current level brought in by the government. And then you abandoned ship when you heard some others saying, well, maybe we might get populist about this. I accept that there are challenges out there. Of course there are. But I expect the Irish people will see the benefits of having an entity like Irish Water and will contribute to that. And remind you again that the charges are €1.15 per week and €3 per week. And the 100 you refer to is a conservation grant. Is a conservation grant to people who register online, and as a consequence they can get that conservation grant.